Okay, أهلا وسهلا. We are continuing on with our lesson. And I've got my little cat. This is Bun Bun. He decided to come and join us today. Okay, so we are going to be talking about Al-Idafa. And this is related to Al-A'ila in terms of the grammatical structure. So when we did that chart and we said في عائلة الوالد, في عائلة الوالدة, that phrase that we used right there, عائلة الوالدة, that's what we call al-idafa. An idafa is a possessive phrase. Okay? Idafa is a possessive phrase. So what I want you to do at this point, I have 6 examples here of al-idafa. I want you to pause the video. I'm just going to put some of the harakat in case you need them. The rest of them you should be fine. So I want you to pause the video, and you are going to read through all 6 of these and try to figure out what are the patterns that you notice between the 6 of them. Okay? And when you think about the pattern, I want you to think about the meanings. So do they have something similar in their meaning? And the second thing I want you to think about is what is similar between all of the first words and all of the second words. So in each one of these examples, right, there's 1, 2. There's 2 words in each one. So you're looking at patterns to see all of the first words in these phrases, do they have something in common? And all of the second words in these phrases, do they have something in common? So pause the video at this point, and you're going to do that on your own. Okay, so now that you have done that, let's go through each one. جامعة New York. جامعة New York. There is a typo here. Should be about there. جامعة New York. University, New York. How would you translate that? University of New York. Okay. مكتب القبول. We did this in the last chapter. مكتب القبول. وقلنا مكتب القبول في welcome center. أين مكتب القبول في Henry Ford? في welcome center. Remember we did that. So مكتب القبول. Admissions office. Okay. Admissions office. والدة مها. والدة مها. Mother of what? Mother of Maha, or Maha's mom. Okay. سيارة الأستاذ. سيارة الأستاذ. والسيارة سيارة يعني car. الأستاذ. أنا الأستاذة. ما معنى أستاذ? Teacher or instructor. So the car of the teacher, the teacher's car. And if you took 130 with me, you know the structure because we covered it. Ibn Ammi. Ibn Ammi. Cousin, but literally what is it? Son of uncle. So my uncle's son. And the last one, Medinat Dearborn. Medinat Dearborn. City of Dearborn. Okay, in terms of the meaning, what is similar between all 6 of these? All 6 of these are possession. Okay? Whenever you have in English an apostrophe S or of, it always means possession. That something belongs to something. So when we say جامعة New York, it's the University of New York. مكتب القبول, it's the office of admissions. والدة مها, it's the mother of Maha. سيارة الأستاذ, it's the car of the teacher, right? So all of these are possessive phrases. So what I would advise you when you're looking at these is when you're translating them, translate them using of. Because that'll help you with the order of the words. Because notice what is the order of all of these words in terms of the meaning. It's something of something. So the thing being possessed comes first, and the possessee, the person whose it is, that's the word that comes second. The thing you're talking about, maybe another way to understand it, the thing you're talking about comes first. So if I say walidat maha, I'm talking about Maha's mom. So mom comes first because she's the one I'm talking about. And then whose it is comes second, right? So if I say sayyarat al-ustad, I'm talking about a car. Whose car is it? It's the teacher's car. So that comes second. Good. So that's in terms of meaning. Now, what can we say in terms of all of the first words and all of the second words? What is similar between them? So let's look at them. جامعة, والدة, ابن, مكتب, سيارة, مدينة. None of these words have what in the beginning of them. None of them start with an alif lam, so none of them start with a definite article, although some of the second words do, so that's something. And none of them have a possessive pronoun at the end. Like for instance here, ammi, you have a pronoun saying my uncle. But none of the first words have a ya at the end saying my, right? So you don't have alif lam on any of those words, and you don't have any possessive pronouns telling you, mine or his or hers, those kind of words. That is what we call, I'm going to put here, that is what we call in terms of types of words, the difference between, we have the phrase nakira and ma'rifa. Nakira means, different color here, means indefinite. And ma'rifa means definite. It comes from the word to know, something that's known. Okay. Words that are ma'rifa, that are definite words. The easiest way to tell if a word is definite is it has a definite article, right? So alif lam, that's a definite article. Put that charger on here. So if a word has alif lam, then that means that word is ma'rifa, it's definite. If a word has a pronoun, we call it ضمائر الملكية. We're going to talk about this in today's lesson. If it has a pronoun at the end of it, okay, then that also means it's definite. So if the word is a pronoun or has a pronoun, so for instance, if I say huwa, that's a pronoun, that's definite. And if I say bayt, and I say his house, baytu, that's also definite because it's specific. It's telling you that it's his house. So things that are ma'arifa, you're defining that word. It's not just a something. It's the something, or his something, or her something. Okay? So it is definite, it is specified. Other words that are ma'arifa, words like هذا, هذه, those are definite because I'm saying this. I mean, it means I'm pointing to something. هذا هاتف, هذا, هذا. So that means I'm saying it's this. It's definite. Okay? Names. اسم علم. Names. If I say Layla, Muhammad, Tazyin, if I say the name of something, that is going to be definite. Okay? There are other examples of things that are definite, like within names, that's also names of places. Dearborn, America, Lebanon, Sudan, like all those types of words are also definite. There's a couple more examples. We're not going to go into all of those because we haven't done all those kinds of words yet. But this is just a basic beginner list. Nakira, words that are indefinite, are words that don't follow that, don't have any of those things. So it does not have alif lam, and it doesn't have a pronoun attached to it, and it's not a name, right? So if it's not any of those things that make it ma'arifa, then it's going to be indefinite. So example, if I say kitab, أي kitab, لا نعرف, we don't know which book, it's just a book, right? If I say usra, it's family. It's not the family, it's not his family, it's not my family, it's just a family, right? If I say jami'a by itself, a university, I don't know whose it is. So those kinds of words are considered nakira. whereas these kinds of words are considered ma'rifah. So now based on that, let's go back and let's look here. And let's see, all of the first words are examples of what? جامعة, والدة, ابن, مكتب, سيارة, مدينة. All of them are examples of what? Nakira. Very good. So the first word in the إضافة is اسم nakira. It's an indefinite word. What about the second word? New York. Which chart would it fall? Which side would it fall under? Would it be considered ma'rifah or nakira? New York. Ma'rifah, because it's a name. Okay? Good. What about Maha? It's also a name. Ammi. It's not a name, but whose uncle am I referring to? I have the ya there. My uncle. Al-Qubul starts with what two letters? Alif Lam. So that's also ma'rifah. Al-Ustad. Ma'rifah. Dearborn. The name of the place. Ma'rifah. So all of the second words are ma'rifah. So when we look at إضافة grammatically, what you want to write for yourself is that al-إضافة is a possessive phrase, okay? And it happens to be two nouns in which the first one is nakira and the last one is ma'rifah. And this isn't the only example of إضافة, but this is the example of إضافة that we're looking at today. Okay? اسم nakira والمعرفة. Oops. So something indefinite followed by something definite. That is what we call al-إضافة. It is possession. It tells you whose is it. Okay. So let's look at some examples. These are in your book on the following page. Page here. Okay, 53, page 53, top of the page. So let's look here. عائلة والدي, family of my dad. عائلة والدي. Notice you have an indefinite word and it's followed by a definite word. Family of my dad, meaning my dad's family. So what you're doing here is you're talking about family and you're specifying whose family it is. And by doing that, you're making the whole phrase a definite phrase because now it's your dad's family. Okay? So family of my father. So if you put it in this structure, it'll help you. You say, okay, family comes first and then my father. In English, we're going to say the family of my father. But in Arabic, we're not going to put al on the beginning of that word. Okay? The other thing to note is if the first word ends in a ta marbuta, pronounce the ta, just like I've been pronouncing in all of these. Jami'at, New York. If it's just jami'a, adrus fil jami'a. I study in university. You don't pronounce it. But if you're attaching it to another word, now those two words are a phrase. They go together. Then we're going to pronounce it. So, عائلة والدي. مكتب الأستاذة. I would recommend pausing. Read through these and then come back to the video. مكتب الأستاذة. So office of who? The professor. So the professor's office. Okay. We're talking about the office, so office comes first. دفتر is notebook. دفتر الطالب. Whose notebook is it? الطالب, the student's notebook. So we're talking about the notebook. We're telling you that it's the students. جامعة New York, we did that. Now the other thing that we want to know is that you can have what is called a complex إضافة, meaning you can have an إضافة that has multiple words. And when you do that, all of the words are going to be nakira. They're all going to be indefinite except for the very last one has to be ma'rifah because the very last one is the possessor. And that possessor is definite. You're relating all of these words are this thing's or this person's. Okay, so let's look at the example here. Ibn Am Walid Maha. Ibn Am Walid Maha. So let's work our way backwards. Son of uncle of father of Maha. So the son of the uncle, the father of Maha, which means Maha's, if we go in the opposite direction, Maha's father's uncle's son, which is Maha's dad's cousin, basically. Okay? So that is an example of a complex إضافة, where you have multiple words. And notice all of these words, ibn, walid, are all nakira. Maha is the only word that's ma'arifa because it's a name. Okay, you're going to take a pause and you're going to read through these examples on the bottom of page 53. Okay, now that we've read them. Medinat, New York. The city of New York. This is the easiest one whenever you have the city of something. Or wilayat, a state. Wilayat, Michigan, the state of something. Right? Those are easy ones. Mintaqat, the region of something. Those are really jami'at, the university of. Those are really easy ones to note out. Because in English we order them in the same way. Jami'at, La'ain, University of La'ain. A'ilat, walidi, we did this example. So my dad's family. غرفة ابن عمي. ما معنى غرفة? Room. So whose room is it? Ibn Ammi. We did this in the family part. So Ibn Ammi is my cousin. So son of my dad's brother, son of my uncle. So you could just say my cousin's room. My cousin's room. So if you were going in the opposite direction, if you were trying to say, okay, I have my cousin's room, and I'm trying to say that in Arabic, and I don't know what order to put it in. Put it in the opposite order. Room of, and then of course cousin, you have to specify whose cousin is it. Is it your male or female cousin? And whose child are they? So room of, so in this case, son of my uncle. And the uncle, of course, you have to specify. So here's Am. صورة. ما معنى الصورة? Picture. صورة والدتي. So the picture of my mom. صورة والدتي. كلية. كلية meaning college. كلية العلوم السياسية. ما معنى العلوم السياسية? This is one of the new vocab words in this chapter. العلوم السياسية meaning political science. So this is the school of political science. كلية means college, but it can also be used as a school when it refers to a school within a university, right? So you could say كلية Henry Ford, right? Henry Ford College. But if we say جامعة Michigan, University of Michigan. University of Michigan has multiple schools within it, right? كلية العلوم السياسية. We have that too in our college. كلية الطب, the school of medicine, or the school of health, or the school of science, school of liberal arts, and so forth. So كلية is college, but it can also be used as school within a university setting. Okay, I'm going to do a couple of other examples. And here's an example. Okay, what's the first one? شغل البيت. What is شغل البيت? ما معنى شغل البيت? Remember we did الثقافة, we talked about شغل البيت. شغل البيت, housework. This right here is an example of a compound word. In English, it's a compound word, meaning we just put those words together. Housework becomes one word. In Arabic, compound words are considered إضافة because you're relating two words to each other. It's the work of the house, right? Work that has to be done in the house. So that is why we use إضافة in this structure. Same thing here. مفتاح يعني key. السيارة. Key of the car, but in English we say car key. So we can have compound words that are examples of إضافة. Okay, so now that we have talked about الإضافة يعني possessive phrases, right? We're now going to move on and talk about الضمائر الملكية. Okay? Whoops, that's not the pen I want. Okay. ضمائر الملكية. Okay. Now you can find ضمائر الملكية on page 54 in your book. And this right here, ضمائر means pronouns. And الملكية is ownership. So this is the same thing. These are what we call possessive pronouns. Possessive. Okay, possessive pronouns. So because we're talking about al-Idafa, possession, we also have to talk about possessive pronouns. So how can you take a noun and make it possessive? By adding a pronoun to it. Okay, so this is really just an extension of Idafa, because in Idafa we said what? That there were two nouns. We said ism nakira wa ism ma'rifa, right? Those are the two things, the components that we have for this type of Idafa that we're talking about. So if I want to say, for instance, بيت العائلة, right? بيت العائلة, the house of the family house. بيت العائلة, in Arab culture, بيت العائلة is usually your grandmother's or grandparents' house. It's the house that everybody in the family comes to. Yom al-Jum'ah, the day of Jum'ah, on Friday, everyone comes there and eats together and hangs out together. That's usually بيت العائلة. Okay, so بيت العائلة. So here we have an example of إضافة. We have two nouns. We have the first one is nakira. Nakira يعني indefinite. لا يوجد ألف لام أو ضمائر أو اسم. It's just going to be an indefinite noun that doesn't have any of those things. Doesn't have an alif lam, doesn't have a pronoun, etc. And then you have the word after it, which is also a noun. We call it ism. Ism, when I say ism, it means noun. Ism ma'rifa. So this is a definite noun because it has alif lam. So when we have this structure together, that's going to mean house of the family. Right? So you have your noun and then whose it is. بيت العائلة. Now when we're talking about ضمائر الملكية, right? Like this. ضمائر الملكية is the same structure as إضافة in that you have an indefinite noun and then you're adding something to the end that's definite. So for instance, if I wanted to say بيت and I want to make it mine, أنا. If it's my house, ماذا نقول? بيت. Okay. وأضفنا الياء. بيتي. Right? We add the ya to the end, that makes it my house. So when you look at this structure, it's the same thing. You have here is your noun, that's nakira, it's indefinite. And then we added this part, which refers to ana, that's the definite. It's a pronoun. Remember, we said pronouns are always referred to as definite words. So this right here is, by extension, an example of إضافة, but we call it a possessive pronoun because what we're doing is we're adding a pronoun to the end of that noun. Okay? So what we want to do then is look at the pronouns that we have. We have done so far, we have الضمير. الضمير is the singular, just means pronoun. And when we say الضمائر, it's the plural. Notice it's جمع تكسير, it's a broken plural. So pronouns. So let's look first at the pronouns that we have. I have أنا, أنت, أنتي, هو, هي, نحن, أنتم, and هم. Okay. So here are all the pronouns that we have. And if you want to rearrange it to make it a little bit easier, we can do that. Let me put this right there. If you want to rearrange the order of your pronouns, what I would suggest, maybe I'll make this a little bit smaller. What I would suggest, and like we've done in our charts, is we put أنا, نحن, and we put that there because this first row is first person. Okay, المتكلم, the person who's talking. And we have here المفرد, the singular, and الجمع, the plural, on this side. And then we have أنت, أنتي, right? You, masculine and feminine. And then we have the plural, أنتم. And I'll add here, actually, even though your book doesn't use it, I'll just mention it here so that you have it for yourself. أنتم and antunna, which is the feminine plural. If I'm saying antum, you all, y'all, right? And that's if I'm speaking to a mixed group or a group of men. But if I say antunna, that's going to be just a group of women. And then we have huwa, hiya, he, she, hum, them, and hunna. Okay. So this is they if we're talking about a group of women. Hunna is just the feminine. Okay. So these right here, put this in blue. These right here are what we call subject pronouns. Okay. This column right here, Al-Fusha, they just labeled that so you could see the difference between the dialects, because to the left of that chart you see Shami wal Masri. We're not covering Shami and Masri, we're just covering Fusha. But these right here, this column, so you have subject pronoun here, this column is what you would call possessive, or you can call it, attached. Okay, possessive or attached pronouns. That's what that column is, the second column. So you have, I'll put this, subject pronouns right here. Okay, we call them ضمائر المنفصلة. They're subject pronouns by themselves. And then we have ضمائر الملكية, which are attached pronouns or possessive pronouns here. Okay, and the reason why I'm using the word attached for possessive is to let you know that this is a pronoun that attaches itself to the noun that it's possessing. Okay, so we've done a lot of these already, and if you took 130 with me, we covered half of these, right? So we're just going to continue and just do all the rest of them. So for ana, you guys already know that. Ana, if I want to make something mine, I'm possessing that thing is mine. The end of that word, we add a ya, right? So if I say, for instance, قطة, my cat's walking around, so she might end up joining us. قطتي, now it's my cat, right? For نحن, if you want to make something ours, we take noon, alif, and attach it to the end of the word. Okay? So if I have the word بيت, بيتنا, now it's our house. أنت and أنتي, if I want to say something is yours. And we did this. Remember when in lesson 1, or was it lesson 2, when we did the word walid wa walida, and we did a chart and we said walidi, waliduka, waliduki, right? Remember we did that? Walidati, walidatuka, walidatuki. That's the same exact thing that we're covering here. This is the same exact thing. But the reason why we're learning it or bringing it back at this point is now so you know that it's in relation to إضافة, because it's possession. Okay, so أنت, we add kaf. أنتي, same thing, but with a kasra. Don't put a ya at the end. Right? So if I say waliduka, waliduka, if you're male, then I would say waliduka, your mom, your dad. Waliduki would be your dad if you're female. So if I'm looking at you and you're female, then I would say waliduki, right? So your mom, your dad. So if I want to make something yours, so this one is my, our, your. Now this part right here is all second person. So all 4 of those are your. It's just المذكر, masculine, المؤنث, so we have masculine, feminine, and then we have the plural, الجمع. So أنتم is going to be kum. والدكم, y'all's dad. So if there's a bunch of you, 3 or 4 of you are brothers and sisters, and I say walidukum, your dad, y'all's dad, meaning you guys. And tunna, if I'm speaking to a group of women. So let's say, for instance, I have 3 sisters, like myself. I'm one of 3 sisters. And we want to say, oh, is that your dad? And then you're talking to all 3 of these women, these 3 sisters. We say walidukunna. We add kaf. We add kaf, noon. So notice I put it 2 ways. You can write the kaf like this, like how I wrote it above, or you can write the kaf like this. You have the option. Okay. Huwa, if it's his dad, waliduhu. Hers, waliduha. Hum, their dad, waliduhum. And hunna is also very easy, waliduhunna. So these last four are very easy because really they look very similar to, especially hum and hunna are exactly the same. You're just attaching the same pronoun to the end of the word. Okay? And in anta, anti, antum, all of them rhyme with the last part of the pronoun. So anta is a ta with a fatha, and ka is kaf with a fatha. The only difference is you're using kaf here. Anti, ki, ti, ki. Notice it rhymes. Antum, kum, using kaf instead of the ta here. Antunna, kunna. So they rhyme with the end of the subject pronoun. So that'll help you to remember them. The other thing that I do want to mention is, remember, we talked about this when we did attached pronouns in a couple of videos previous to this. And we said that when you attach a word, so if I say, I'll put in a different color here. So if I say walid and I want to say any of these, her dad, for instance, when you're pronouncing it in Fusha, the last letter here, for now, you're going to pronounce it with the dhamma. When we start doing what we call i'rab, which is case endings, you'll notice that sometimes it might have a fatha or kasra depending on what its grammatical function is in the sentence. But for right now, we're only using sentences that use words that have dhamma at the end for the most part. Right? So just in terms of pronunciation, waliduha, same thing, waliduka, waliduki. The other thing that I did mention is, if you want, what you could do is you could end, so if you had only one letter, so if it was like this, okay, waliduki. Okay. You could, if you wanted, pronounce it with the kasra on the dal and shorten it, walidak, walidak. Okay. So if that's easier and you want to do that in terms of pronunciation, people tend to do that even if they're speaking formal. Okay. But for when you have the ya, it's always going to be e at the end. Walidi. Okay? Walidati. So you don't have to worry about the haraka for that one. Okay? So these right here are all of your attached pronouns. So let's look at some examples. Okay, I'm going to attach this here. So let's look at some examples. I'm going to remake that chart. Ana. And you, of course, can pause the video and write it down for yourself. Okay. Antum, antunna, huwa, hiya, hunna. Okay, once you've got the chart, you can unpause it. So now what you want to do is, for each of these, we're going to do two words. Okay. We're going to do the word bait. So I'll add here baiti, where you take the word bait and you're going to attach the correct pronoun to the end. So I'm putting it next to ana so that you know it refers to yourself, that it's my house. Okay? So you're going to do the word bait and then pause, do all of them, come back, and then I'll give you another word to practice. So what I'm doing here is I'm simply writing the word bait with the ta open because we're going to be attaching the pronoun to the end. Okay, so just to make it easier for the colors. Okay, so for all of these, we want to take the word bait and we want to attach the pronoun. So baiti, my house. Baituna, our house. So you can pronounce this here with a dhamma. Baytuna, our house. Okay. Baytuka, your house. And if you want to pronounce it here, baytak, you could do that. Baytuki, or if you want to pronounce it, baytik, your house. So remember, I know people get confused with the yours. It just depends. It doesn't change the gender of the house. It's depending on who are you talking to. Okay. Are you talking to someone who's a woman? Or are you talking to someone who's a man? There isn't necessarily a gender-neutral pronoun similar to English. So if you do want to use a gender-neutral pronoun for a person, you can use أنتم, بيتكم. The same way we do in English now, they and them, right, as gender-neutral pronouns. So أنت بيتك, بيتك, أنتم بيتكم. Same thing here, pronounce it with the dhamma. أنتن بيتكن. Okay. His house, بيته. Her house, بيتها. Of course, you could write it like that, or if you want to write it like that, you can do that too. بيتها. Their house, بيتهم. And their house, if it's just a group of women, بيتهن. And of course, same thing here. If you want to write it like this, you can. Okay. So you can go ahead and check your answers and see how you did. So now pause the video after I give you this next word. You're going to do the word. What word shall I give you? Let's do the word usra. Here's the word usra. And we want to make it my house. So words that end in a ta marbuta. What you do, words that end in a ta marbuta, you open up, iftah ta. You open the ta. Now it's ta maftuha. It's an open ta. And now you can take that word and you can attach the pronoun to the end. Usrati. So go ahead and complete all of these for usra. And I'm just going to write usra on all of them so I don't have to change the color of my marker. And while I'm doing this, you can go ahead and fill it. It's the great thing about video lessons. You can pause and rewind as you want. About the letter dot. Okay, so if you haven't finished, go ahead and pause the video and then come back. So, usrati, my family. If I want to say our family, usratuna. Usratuna, our family. Your family, usratuka. Or if you want to say usratak, that's fine. Putting the fatha on the ta instead. Usratak. Usratuki. Or usratik. Usratukum. See if I can squeeze it in here. Okay. Usratukum. This is attached. Usratukunna. Huwa, his family. Usratuhu. Her family. Usratuha. Their family. Usratuhum. Their family, feminine. Usratuhunna. Okay. So now what you can do is you can use this, right? And you can use this for any noun that we have done. Attached pronouns are for nouns only. We're going to look at attached pronouns with verbs later on in the semester. And they're pretty similar. But for right now, we're only focused on nouns. Okay, so how do you take a noun and make it possessive? And remember, when we're talking about Al-Iḍāfa, we said there are two nouns that are next to each other. And this is the same thing. We're putting a noun with a pronoun. And a pronoun is a specific type of noun. Okay, so these same attached pronouns, we can use it on the word عند. Make this smaller and put this up here. The word عند, which means to have. And in English, we treat to have like a verb. But باللغة العربية, we use this as a حرف. The word حرف is a preposition. Okay. Really, there's three types of words that we have. In kalima, there's three types of words. We have al-ism, which is your nouns, and adjectives follow this pattern as well, nouns and adjectives. You have الفعل, which are your verbs, and your verbs are الحدث في زمن معين, so it's an action, right, that happens in a specific time. And you have الحرف, which is a preposition, words that have to come with some other noun to give it meaning. حرف are things like in and over and on and to, those kind of small words that we have, right? So حرف, words that we've done that are حروف, are things like إلى, على, من, okay? في, those kinds of words. So عند, we treat it like a حرف, okay? So it gets treated like a حرف in that you can take an attached pronoun and you can attach it to the end. Okay? So it won't be treated like a verb. Don't think of عند like a verb. We don't conjugate it the way we do with verbs. So I'm going to do the same thing here. Your book, of course, gives you this order, but I'm going to give you the same chart that we did before just because I just think it's easier. I just think it's an easier way of breaking down the pronouns so that you can recognize the patterns. Right? Because what I'm doing, again, this is all singular. This side is all plural. The first row is first person. Second row is second person when you're talking to someone. The third row is third person when you're talking about someone. And then in terms of gender, both of these are masculine. Both of these are feminine. Both of these are masculine. And both of these are feminine going across. So I'm just trying to arrange it in a way where you can notice all of the patterns and they're easier for you. Okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to solve that. We're going to take the same word here, عند, and we're going to see that we can attach all of these attached pronouns that we have done the same exact way that we do them with nouns. We can now do them with prepositions. So in the last slide we talked about how these attached pronouns were focusing on nouns. Now we're looking at it with prepositions. Verbs will come to in a couple chapters. Okay, so I've got عند right here. So if I want to make something mine, what do? I add the ya to the end. عندي, meaning I have. Okay? Meaning I have. Okay. So عندي, I have, meaning عند, something that is had by me, right? So something that is possessed by me. Notice how all of these have to do with possession. Okay. So عندي, I have. عندي أسرة صغيرة. I have a small family. عندي, right? Even though عندي you use for things, right? What would be better would be to say لي. لي أسرة صغيرة. But it's the same exact thing. When you have the letter lam, right? And we added a ya to the end. It's the same thing. It's the letter lam is as if right here what we have in green, and then you're attaching here the ya to the end. Okay, so let's do the rest of them. So I want you to pause the video, do the rest of them, and then come back and check your answers. Okay, أنا عندي, نحن, we have, عندنا. Okay, we have, عندنا. أنت, عندك, or عندك. If you want to pronounce it like this, many times people pronounce it like that. أنتِ, عندك, or عندك. أنتم, عندكم. Whoops. I want to say أنتن there. I'm sure you were looking at it for a few minutes and when is she going to fix that? Okay. أنتن, عندكن. هو, عنده. Whoops. That is not. It's not attached. Okay. عندكن. عنده. So remember, we're not attaching because the dal doesn't attach here. هي, عندها, she has. هم عندهم. هن عندهن. Okay. So now what you can see is that you can play out possession using this word. Now the same exact thing happens. You can do the same exact thing with the word fi. Okay, we can say, for instance, here, fi, fiha, and that's something that we'll look at in a couple of chapters because fi also can mean have when it comes to inanimate objects. Okay, but right now let's just focus on عند. So this is to have. What I do want to mention is if you want to say I don't have, okay, if you want to negate عند, we're going to use the word ليس. Okay, that's for a little bit above. ليس. Just hack on the word ليس in front. ليس عندي وقت. I don't have time. ليس عندنا صف. We don't have class. Okay. ليس عندهم ليس عندهم سيارة. They don't have a car. So you just put ليس right in front of عند, and now it's negated. It's the negative. ليس عندي. ليس عندنا. ليس عندك. ليس عندك. Okay. So we could use it in a question now. هل عندك, or if I want to ask all of you, هل عندكم قلم? هل عندكم قلم? If you don't have one, which you should have one because you're watching a lesson, so you should have قلم in front of you. Okay, but if you wanted to say I don't, ليس عندي قلم. ليس عندنا واجب. We don't have homework. So when you just attach ليس to the end, all it does is it's going to make it negation. So now what we have done, we have covered الإضافة. What does الإضافة look like? And within الإضافة we talked about النكرة والمعرفة, indefinite, definite. And we've talked about ضمائر الملكية, possessive pronouns. And we've attached these possessive pronouns to a word like عند. So it's a lot of stuff we've covered. So let's do a little bit of practice and then you can continue the rest of the practice on your own. Okay. So let's look at تمرين 14. تمرين 14 في صفحة 57, page 57. So page 57 it says تمرين 14 الإضافة. Read the following sentences and describe the following sentences describing مها وعائلتها. First silently, then out loud. Pay special attention to the pronunciation of الإضافة in the ta مربوطة in إضافة. What I want you to do in this drill is you're going to read through those sentences and you're going to underline all of the examples you have of الإضافة, of possession. Okay? So if we look at the first one. It says مها بنت مصرية عمرها 20 سنة وهي تسكن في منطقة بروكلين. Okay, they wrote it with a yeah. That's fine. Okay, you're going to pause. Try to see if you can find all the examples of إضافة and then come back. And I'm going to add the next one here. Harder writing on an iPad than. There we go. Okay. مها بنت مصرية عمرها 20 سنة. مها is what? Bint, a girl. مصرية is a girl, Egyptian. She's an Egyptian girl. When we're looking for إضافة, the first thing you want to do is try to understand what is the sentence saying, what's the meaning of the sentence. And then what you want to do is try to find, is there possession here? Is there any phrase in here that we're saying of something, or his or hers or mine or yours or ours? Those are the types of phrases that we're looking for. So when we say Maha bint Masriya, Maha is an Egyptian girl. This right here, Masriya, some of you might have underlined this. That would be wrong, because in this, you're not telling us that she's a girl of Egypt. Egypt owns her. No, we're just saying she's Egyptian. Okay, that's just an adjective, a sifa. Nisba. Remember, nisba adjectives were a sifa, adjective. So that's just an adjective. Idafa is not an adjective. It is possession. Okay? And that might be worthwhile to mention here, that we have covered examples of an ism, sifa, and these right here are adjective phrases. Adjective phrases or adjectival phrases. Like al-Idafa, I'm using my voice again. Al-Idafa is possessive phrase. So while an adjective phrase describes, Idafa tells you whose is it. Okay, that's the difference between the two. The other difference that we've seen between the two is that al-ism al-sifa we talked about in lesson 1, it has to match. The noun and the adjective has to match. You have a noun and you have an adjective, right? So if we say bayt kabir, mudhakkar mudhakkar, they're both matching. They're both mudhakkar. If I said the big house, it's going to become al-bayt al-kabir, right? If the word in the beginning is mu'annath, it's feminine, then what do? We have to add ta' marbuta to the adjective, right? I think that we had seen the example of talib, tawil, a tall student. If I said taliba, tawila, a tall student, if she's female, right? So in this, they have to match. Ism means noun, sifa means adjective. So they're a noun and an adjective that are matching. But in idafa, it's not a noun and an adjective. It's an indefinite noun plus a definite noun. There's two nouns. So if I wanted to use bayt, in this case, bayt walidi, my dad's house. So in this case, it's a noun and it's indefinite, nakira. In this case, you have a noun and it's ma'rifa. And you're telling me whose house it is. Okay? Bayt walidi, it's my dad's house. Whereas this one, you're not telling me whose house, you're describing the house. Okay? So that's the difference between these two types of phrases that we have. So if we go back here, this right here, I'll leave it in blue. This right here is an example of an adjective. Ism al-sifa. Ism al-sifa, that's an example of adjective. That's not an example of idafa. So let's put idafa in red so it stands out. عمرها 20 سنة. What is this? Her age. You have a noun right here, and you're attaching a definite pronoun. So anytime you have a pronoun to the end, you can consider that idafa. It's the age of hers. عمرها 20 سنة. She's 20 years old. وهي تسكن في منطقة بروكلين. وهي تسكن, and she lives. That's not going to be considered one because that's a verb, right? هي تسكن في منطقة بروكلين. What is منطقة بروكلين? The area or the neighborhood of the borough of Brooklyn. So that's an example of idafa. Notice here you have اسم نكرة. It's indefinite. لا يوجد ألف لام أو ضمير أو أي شيء. Brooklyn, اسم علم, is the name of something, so it's معرفة. It's definite. So these two together, when we think about idafa, those words are coming together. They're creating a meaning, a singular meaning. Okay, the neighborhood or the area of Brooklyn. So we consider that idafa. Okay. And notice they don't have to be matching. منطقة has ta' مربوطة, Brooklyn does not. So in إضافة, the words don't have to match in gender the way that they do when you have a noun adjective phrase. The other thing to notice is when you have إضافة, إذا يوجد تاء مربوطة في آخر الكلمة, if you have تاء مربوطة here at the end of the word, we pronounce the تاء. منطقة Brooklyn. And this helps you join those words together. منطقة Brooklyn helps you even when you say it, it sounds like it's one phrase that goes together. Okay, so now let's look at اثنين. رقم اثنين والدة مها فلسطينية ولكن عندها الجنسية المصرية. والدة مها, so mother مها. What structure is this when we say والدة مها? I'm even giving you a clue by pronouncing it as والدة مها, والدة مها. Whose mother? Maha. So that's an example of إضافة. You have an indefinite word and a definite word. Maha is definite because it's her name. So whose mother is it? Maha's mother. That's an example of إضافة. والدة مها فلسطينية. فلسطينية is not an example of إضافة because what is it? It's describing her. Good, it's a صفة. So that's a description, right? An adjective. So that's, we're not looking at adjectives, we're trying to just find إضافة. ولكن عندها الجنسية المصرية. What does عندها mean? She has, right? So that's another example of possession. What about الجنسية المصرية? Is that an example of إضافة? Think about why it's not an example of إضافة. In إضافة, we said that you have to have an indefinite followed by a definite, and it tells you whose thing it is. So let's look here. The first word, is it indefinite? كيف نعرف? If a word starts with ألف لام, it's considered معرفة. It's definite. So just right off the bat, when you look at it, the first word has ألف لام, it's معرفة. Therefore, it cannot be إضافة because the first word can never take ألف لام. So we have, notice, I'll put it in a different color because it's not إضافة. This has ألف لام, this has ألف لام. This has a تاء مربوطة, this has a تاء مربوطة. They're both matching. If you have two words that are matching, then that means that it is an example of الاسم الصفة. It's a phrase, a noun adjective phrase, right? You're describing it. So الجنسية, جنسية المصرية. الجنسية was one of our new words in the last chapter. Nationality. So she has what kind of nationality? Egyptian nationality. Okay. So what you want to do is you want to continue on the rest of that drill, and you want to see, can you pull out which one is إضافة? And if you want to take it a step further, try to pull out between the two of these. Once you've gotten all الإضافات, once you've found all the examples of إضافة, then go back and see, can you find examples of الاسم والصفة, noun adjective phrases? And if you can do that, then you'll really have a good understanding grammatically of what's the difference between these types of phrases that we're covering. Okay? Okay, يلا مع السلامة.